On the Eastern Front, an MG42 gunner's life expectancy was sometimes just minutes. The fastest gun in the world could unleash a storm of bullets, but for the men behind it, that roar was also a death sentence. In this video, you'll uncover why wielding Germany's most infamous machine gun was both a terrifying privilege and a cursed fate. From the sheer firepower that froze entire platoons to the brutal reality that made its crews priority targets, you'll see how the MG42 became as deadly for its operators as it was for their enemies. So here's the question. If you were handed the choice, carry the deadliest weapon of World War II, knowing it painted a bullseye on your back, or stay alive a little longer with less firepower, what would you pick? Let me know in the comments before we dive into the full story. Imagine pulling the trigger and unleashing a storm of 25 bullets in a single second. That was the reality of the MG42, a weapon so fast that Allied troops nicknamed it Hitler's buzzsaw. Its rate of fire, between 1,200 and 1,500 rounds per minute, shattered everything that came within its arc. To soldiers on the receiving end, it felt less like a gun and more like an unstoppable natural disaster. But this terrifying speed was also a curse. It made the gun almost impossible to ignore. The MG42 wasn't just a weapon, it was a spotlight of death. Firepower meant death spotlight. Allied soldiers learned to recognize one sound above all others: the MG42's tearing roar. Veterans compared it to fabric ripping, but louder, sharper, and endlessly more terrifying. Once that sound cut through the battlefield, every artillery gun, mortar team, and sniper zeroed in on the source. The very noise that froze enemy troops in place also betrayed the gunners' exact position. For every squad they suppressed, a counterstrike was already inbound. The MG42 cursed its crew by making them the first target in any battle. The loudest gun meant the shortest life. German recruits who were assigned to the MG42 quickly gave it a grim nickname: Suicide School. From the first day of training, instructors drilled into them the reality that gunners rarely lived long in real combat. The course emphasized speed, barrel swaps in seconds, ammo feeding without pause, and firing discipline under unimaginable stress. But no matter how skilled you became, it didn't guarantee survival. The MG42's roar painted a target on your back, and skill only delayed the inevitable. For many, every lesson felt like preparation, not for mastery, but for martyrdom. Training meant preparing for death. The MG42 wasn't a one-man weapon. It was a partnership of doom. One soldier pulled the trigger, while the assistant gunner carried spare barrels, ammunition belts, and tools. Each depended completely on the other, bonded by the fact that both were marked men. If the gunner fell, the assistant often took his place immediately, inheriting both the power and the risk. This deadly teamwork meant survival was rarely individual. Both lives were chained to the same fate. To fight with the MG42 was to fight as twins in mortality. 2 men, 1 death sentence. The MG42 fired so fast, it often burned itself alive. Within seconds of continuous bursts, its barrel would glow red, warping under the heat. Crews carried spare barrels and were trained to swap them out in mere moments. But those frantic seconds of cooling and reloading exposed gunners to enemy fire. Imagine crouching under artillery while juggling scalding hot metal just to keep your weapon alive. For many crews, the pause wasn't a tactical choice, it was a death trap. Speed killed both ways. With firepower that chewed through belts in seconds, the MG42 demanded an endless appetite for ammunition. A single engagement could consume thousands of rounds, forcing assistants to haul heavy boxes across dangerous terrain. This burden slowed the entire crew, tying them to static positions and making retreat nearly impossible. The MG42 was less a weapon than an anchor, one that chained its operators to their post until the fight ended, one way or another. The gun that devoured ammo devoured men too. Few sounds in WWII struck terror like the MG42's buzzsaw roar. American and British soldiers described it as ripping canvas, a sound that froze men in their tracks before a single bullet hit. Allied propaganda even spread tales of the weapon to intensify the fear, turning its legend into psychological warfare. Yet the same noise that terrified enemies also cursed the men firing it. For every enemy squad pinned down, reinforcements were called, mortars zeroed in, and counterattacks launched. The MG42 terrorized and betrayed at the same time. Fear cuts both directions. On the vast Russian steppe, MG42 crews stood against wave after wave of Soviet infantry. The gun could cut down dozens in seconds, creating fields of devastation. But for every attack repelled, another followed. Overwhelmed and outnumbered, crews often lasted only days before being destroyed by artillery or encircled. Survivors recalled the endless tide of men that even the MG42 could not stop. The faster it fired, the more enemies it seemed to attract. Victory meant only another assault. In Normandy, the MG42 became the cornerstone of German defense. Every hedgerow, bunker, and fortified house seemed to hide one, spitting fire at advancing Allied troops. At first, this dominance looked unbeatable, entire squads pinned down by a single nest. But once the gunners revealed their position, Allied artillery and aircraft rained destruction with overwhelming force. The MG42 gave crews immense short-term power, but turned their emplacement into a marked grave. Fire it, and you were already signing your death warrant. Firepower turned to tombstone. By now, you can see why the MG42 was both feared and cursed. Its power was unmatched, but its crews rarely lived long enough to celebrate it. If you're hooked by these hidden truths of World War II, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell. That way you won't miss the next brutal story that history books usually leave in the shadows. Join the channel and step into history's untold side. The MG42's roar wasn't just terrifying, it was a homing beacon. Allied units could triangulate its position in seconds, even without spotting muzzle flashes. The very sound that froze men in terror also betrayed the gunner's hiding place. No matter how clever the camouflage, the ripping buzz revealed everything. For gunners, silence wasn't an option. Every burst gave away their lives. Stealth was impossible. Each burst from an MG42 pinned entire platoons to the ground. But this dominance came at a deadly cost. The gunner was locked into position. The more you fired, the less chance you had to escape. Enemy artillery didn't need to destroy the squad, only the gun. The MG42's strength worked like a magnet, holding its operators in place until counterfire obliterated them. The stronger the grip, the tighter the trap. No frontline role in the German army was more short-lived than the MG42 gunner. Records show casualty rates so high that some divisions replaced crews almost weekly. A new recruit might be trained on Monday and buried by Friday. Even seasoned veterans admitted that survival was a matter of luck more than skill. The gun consumed not just ammunition, but the men who operated it. The MG42 ate bullets, and it ate lives. The Allies refused to let the MG42 dictate the battlefield. Sherman tanks were ordered to suppress machine gun nests with direct fire, while P-47 Thunderbolts strafed them from above. Infantry squads developed new tactics, flanking wide, calling in mortars, or sacrificing a man to draw fire so others could advance. No matter how lethal the weapon, combined arms eventually overwhelmed it. The gunner could stall the battle, but he could not win it. A single nest could never outlast the swarm. For a few fleeting seconds, the MG42 gave its gunner the feeling of invincibility. Entire platoons scattered, walls splintered, and attackers were shredded before they could blink. Yet this illusion vanished the moment enemy mortars or tanks returned fire. That rush of dominance often lured gunners into firing longer than they should, revealing their position and sealing their fate. What felt like unstoppable power was usually a countdown to destruction. Power meant exposure. The MG42's engineering brilliance outlived the war itself. Its design was copied almost directly into the post-war MG3, which NATO still uses today. Militaries studied its rate of fire, recoil system, and efficiency as the gold standard of machine gun design. But this legacy only sharpens the irony. The weapon that cursed its own gunners became a blueprint for generations of armies. A triumph of engineering, but a tragedy for those who pulled its trigger. Brilliant design, cursed fate, but not the lives it consumes. Not every MG42 gunner died on the battlefield. A few survived, but survival came with its own punishment. Veterans spoke of unbearable guilt, remembering assistants who were cut down while they lived on. Some carried nightmares for decades, hearing the ripping buzz in their sleep, haunted by faces of men who never came home. For them, survival was not victory. It was a burden that never left. The curse lingered beyond war. The MG42 was meant to be Germany's great battlefield equalizer, a weapon to hold back overwhelming odds. Yet its very brilliance doomed the soldiers ordered to wield it. For every squad it wiped out, counterfire destroyed its crew in return. The weapon that symbolized dominance left a trail of fallen operators. In the end, the MG42 proved deadliest not just for the Allies, but for the Germans who fired it. Deadliest job, shortest lifespan. So why was being an MG42 gunner the most cursed job in World War II? Because it combined everything a soldier might fear: overwhelming firepower, crushing responsibility, and an almost certain death sentence. The gun's roar could stop battalions in their tracks, yet that same sound marked its crews for destruction. To wield it was to step into history's deadliest paradox: unstoppable and doomed all at once. The MG42 became both legend and grave. The fastest gun, the shortest life. If this story gripped you, the next one will shake you even more. Don't miss our deep dive into another brutal battlefield role history often ignores. Click here to see it.